has performed, and where do you want to see India pharma sector going when we talk about using blockchain and other emerging technologies, especially for supply chain management and streamlining supply chain management? Your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Souvik. So I think one of the things that have happened and what's got accelerated with the pandemic has been the need for a lot more flexibility on the systems. There was a huge amount of variation that was there during the pandemic. There were some therapies that had an increased amount of growth, certain therapies that saw a slowdown because of the way in which the whole lockdown and the unlock happened. What that necessitated was your ability to be able to respond quickly to changing demand patterns that were really coming across. And the supply chain and manufacturing, I would argue, along with procurement too, I think needed to be extremely agile as we are going across. So I think the biggest need that really came in for, or the need for the technology, was the need for both efficiency, agility, and flexibility. That really led the change that was coming across. The first part, which I think most organizations went on to, was to really enhance their whole supply chain planning capability and the ability to make sure that they were getting closer to what the demand pattern was, which necessitated a lot more analytics, not just descriptive, but a little more prescriptive and to some extent predictive as well. And the need for having some kind of AI/ML models that were starting to say what was the way in which you were taking this across. I think we saw a lot more of that kind of coming through. This led back all the way to also your re-looking at your risk patterns and risk profiles when you were looking at procurement, for instance, because you now needed to not just look at what was your lowest cost when you were looking at a supplier, but also where your supplier was located and whether there was a chance that suppliers are going to be impacted, which would lead to an impact on the supply chain overall. So all in all, I think when we were looking at technology, the imperative really was making sure that how do you have a much better way for your manufacturing, supply chain, distribution, procurement to be able to meet the changing demands that were coming across and to be able to do it in a flexible and agile manner, which is what was demanded. Whatever technologies helped in making that happen, I think people have started looking to make that come to the fore.
Right. A very important point raised by you. Talked about the biggest lesson out of pandemic was how flexible our system were, and also planning according to the increasing demand and whether we are going close to that need or the demand. And for that, analytics was played a very important part was played by analytics. I'll come to you, Mr. Ganesh. Let me have a perspective from Mr. Anjani Kumar, CIO Strides Pharma. Mr. Anjani, your thoughts on that?
See, supply chain always has been important to pharma, but when you go through the disruption, that is where you start looking at what are the other things which you could do. And this is where most of the pharma companies' supply chain resiliency was tested. And as Ganesh talked about, technology was enabler. Some people were using, some people were not using, right? And a lot of the time we call it pharma sector. If you look at till few years back, it was going through corporate comorbidity, you could say, from the digital perspective. Right now, I have seen in last 1.5 years, 2 years, a lot of companies have started doing the analytics, the data which was already sitting, and there are several ways you could do. One is your own data. Two, there are several public sources which you could use. There are third-party provider which will give you the real-time data feeds. You could do automations of part of supply chain, and all of this is playing in real in last few months. Now, when it comes to supply chain, I always hear blockchain. To me, blockchain is pharma supply chain. It's just overinflated. There are 30, 40 POCs going on. I'm yet to see a product which is being used completely for commercial purposes. We are also part of a couple of them. We have done something with Niti Aayog, did not go beyond POCs, right? So coming back to, if you look at whole supply chain, what do you have? You have the SNOP, consists of demand planning, supply chain planning, inventories, and then overall, how do you form the SNOP dashboards? On the demand planning, I think you wanted to mainly talk about supply chain planning, but demand planning is very closely connected with it. You can't just do in isolation. And if you do in isolation, the whole principle of three principle, which we talk about, that throughput, the right efficiency, and the third one is the cash flow. All three will get impacted, and that is where you have to link your supply chain with your demand planning. And this, when you are linking these two, there are a lot of technology could be in play. One of the things we talked about analytics, and I think Ganesh talked enough about it. I don't want to talk about the analytics use case itself, but if you look at use case, you will do it. If you are not doing the right adoptions, like are you doing a probit adoption or are you doing the epidemic adoption? And that is where, I mean, most of us struggle in, because our adoptions are probit adoptions, and then we struggle to get the right results. And finally, what happens is it impacts your next initiative as well. So I would say we are still in nascent phase from the technology adoption in the supply chain. Some companies have got few percentages right, but most of us, I would say, is still in the native stage of it.
A very different perspective we got from Mr. Anjani Kumar. Though you supported Mr. Ganesh's take that linking supply chain with demand is important, resilience factor is also important, but you think that, according to you, that when you talk about using effective technology, emerging technology for the supply chain, the pharma sector in India is yet to go. That's what your take is all about. Let's have a perspective from Biocon Group CIO Atanu Roy. Mr. Roy, your take on this particular question.
Yeah. So, I would like to further segregate it, because the pharma supply chain is quite wide. So if we further slice it down to the expensive products, and by expensive products, I mean also the rare products, or say the injectables, and those are the products which are produced less in number. They are difficult to make, and they need to be distributed effectively. And that is where quick response and supply, effective distribution, efficient consumer response, and the delivery to that is very important. For example, let's take the pandemic situation, month of April, May, where, say, drugs like remdesivir or itolizumab, tocilizumab, these were in huge demand, and the supply was always constrained. And there used to be products which is lying in one part of the possibly country or a city, and it is required somewhere else. So effective knowledge of where the requirement is, exact requirement, and can the scarce supply which is available, inventory which is available, can it be distributed effectively or redistributed effectively? That capability was really tested in the month of April. And I found, actually, as a country and as the pharma supply chain and distribution, we were found lacking. There were also counterfeits coming into the market, and we didn't know that this is the real remdesivir or this is the one which is having water, whether this is the real tocilizumab. And then there used to be health officers in each of the cities using manual records to know which batch number, and they were doing effective controlling. So I think this rapid distribution, visibility of the supply chain, the distribution chain, especially, and you can't do it for all products, but the ability to do it for the life-saving drugs, where exactly the product is, and can you redistribute it? So where is the demand and where is the supply, and can it be redistributed to save lives? I think that is very, very important. And I don't think as a country or as an organization, most of us are there yet. It was tested and we were found lacking. So while we can talk of big things, but there are actually simple solutions which can help it, where visibility of demand at the last point, the last mile problem, visibility of the demand, and can the supply be done effectively with and ensuring that there are no counterfeit products. So because there in such expensive drugs, counterfeit products are being sold, patients are being fooled, and it is creating a mess in the environment. So that is where the technology components are there. It is just to put that together industry wide to make that happen. And I think we are not there yet. We have not yet implemented it, and that needs to be done. This gets tested. It was pressure tested in the COVID time, but if the capability would have really been existing, it would have been handled much better. And the last mile of it. So pharma companies normally have the visibility to the distributor, and from distributor to chemist, it is bits and pieces, not really there. But one needs to have the visibility till the last point, till the patient, to the chemist, and in the hospitals to the patient, and ensuring that the real point of demand and supply is matched and things are redistributed. And mind you, these products also have an expiry date. These are not products which don't have an expiry date. So doing it in the time, within that time, is important. And many of them have to be maintained in cold supply chains. So, because I'm talking of the expensive products, injectables, they have to be maintained in a particular condition. So that management all over the thing, including preventing counterfeit products, is an important part which needs to be handled. And I don't think we have mastered that art yet.
Taking cue from what Mr. Atanu had just said, that it also actually gives us an opportunity to upgrade to the next level. You talked about the lacuna in the system and where are the gaps. You talked about you talked about the supply chain was tested during the pandemic, and where the gaps were there. I think that also brings to us the opportunity where we can excel ourselves as a pharma industry in terms of technological disruption and or leveraging technological innovation. I'll come to you, Mr. Roy. Let's have a perspective from Ravi, Kalla, Head IT and Automation, Anthem Biosciences Private Limited. Mr. Ravi, your thoughts on that?
Complex. Basically, we have various stakeholders in the entire process: suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, retailers, or hospitals and patients. So there are many hands which is involved in the whole process. So there are two things. One is drugs availability. The second the second problem is the drugs which are available and returned back to the pharmaceutical companies. So there are two things. One is we need to worry about the products availability. The second, and we need to ensure the right demand and right conditions are used to store them. Otherwise, we have to face the regulatory challenges. So there are a lot of opportunities to use various technologies to identify the right demands, and also ensuring that these products are stored at a right with the right conditions. Basically, we can't store them in temperature. If it's a temperature sensitive, we have to store them in a temperature sensitive conditions. The biggest challenge is we manufacture and we supply to the distributors, and from distributors to the patient, there are many players are involved in. And there is no particular, I mean, there's no concrete evidence like all these products are handled in a proper way. And that's another thing. The another challenge is generally what we see is the fake drugs, like especially in the pandemic. There are many drugs which are introduced, or many people are use these opportunities. So the biggest challenge is to how to address these kind of things is another concern. There are various solutions and technologies are available, but adoption is very, very low at this point of time. And as Anjani said, there are we couldn't do blockchain kind of POCs because of various conditions. So we have manufacturers, and all the manufacturing equipments has to be integrated, and we have to integrate with our suppliers. So that's the biggest problem, because everybody are making their own the ledgers, like you have information from your suppliers, and then that is not integrated with your ecosystem. And then you have a lot of distributors, and from your supplier to your distributor and to the patient, we don't have a transparent visibility across the value chain. So this is the biggest challenge for pharmaceutical as of now. But there are technologies which are coming up, and especially the COVID-19 taught a lesson for most of the pharma companies, and they're adopting these kind of technologies. And the another problem is we have a complex kind of infrastructure. So different OEMs and different solution providers. So integration is the major challenge. Unless until you integrate all of these things, we will not able to see better real-time visibility.
Right, interesting perspective. One is integration is a challenge and also infrastructure. So you talked about these two challenges. Let's have a perspective from Mr. Atanu Bhaumik, Chief Technology Officer, DK Pharmachem Private Limited. Mr. Bhaumik, your take on this particular question, I must say that streamlining supply chain management by using technology innovation, what has been your experience?
Well, what has been already spoken by Ganesh, Anjani, Atanu, and Ravi too. I also am the same believer of what Mr. Atanu Roy has to say. There are challenges. However, there are other things also which we are already able to, able to manage. Like in the supply chain management, there are the freight thing, the full freight, the half freight, and around those things, which is the one which we have to be transported, like the last till the distributor, and the time required, and there are 2 hours. Some drugs have to be reaching in within 2 hours. Those are having time limits. So those kind of things, and according to, as Anjani was saying, there has to be a tight integration between the planning and the demand and execution of the supply chain. So these are the things which have to be integrated together in a system, and in absence of a blockchain, this becomes difficult, because blockchain is one technology as it allows you to have the traceability and at a real-time transaction visibility. These are the plus points. However, there are still yet a lot of things have to be done on the blockchain front, and I believe is something which is pharmaceutical industry will be looking forward for. Yep.
Right. You said that blockchain technology, there are advantages of using blockchain technology in terms of traceability factor, but there are also other factors which also need to be considered upon. I'll come back to Mr. Bhaumik. Let's again get a perspective from Mr. Ganesh Ramachandran. Ganesh, Mr. Atanu talked about the challenges and where we lagged during this situation. And I said that perhaps also brings us opportunity to re-strategize or replan our approach to the entire ecosystem. Do you think that this pandemic has also given us huge opportunity to upskill or to upgrade pharma sector to the next level, which perhaps would have taken 5 years, 10 years down the line, but maybe this has given opportunity to upscale, upgrade to the next level in a span of 1.5 years. I know miles to go before we sleep, but a lot of things have happened. Maybe a lot of new things will be happening in next 5-6 months. It won't take 5-6 years. Your take on that?
No, I couldn't agree more, Souvik. So, like all the members were mentioning, I think pharma as an industry was a bit of a laggard in some of the areas of technology adoption. And I think the pandemic has really accelerated many of those areas. There was a McKinsey study that was there, which kind of figured that across industries and globally, they found that there was at least a 5-year acceleration on adoption of technology. I would argue that in pharma, the number is probably a little larger, because many of the things, and some of us like Anjani and me who've come from different industries into pharma, what we realized was things that were normal in other industries like CPG was just not there in pharma. So, for instance, stock is placing an order on the company. Standard practice in many of the other industries, but wasn't really seen before the pandemic in a major way in many of the pharma companies. I think we have seen some of those which have really got accelerated. To me, the biggest place where acceleration happened during the pandemic in pharma was in the front office, we saw tremendous amount of transformation right across, whether it was order placement, whether it was get a better visibility on your forecast, whether it was making sure that you engaged better with your doctors. And the only way in which the engagement happened in the pharma industry was the face-to-face interaction which your field teams had. I think now with the pandemic, you saw that there were multiple ways by which you could engage, whether through digital modes or otherwise. Similarly, even engagement with the patients was something which pharma industry hardly had in the Indian context. Whereas globally, what you do talk of is a lot more where pharma companies are focusing on disease management. Maybe 10 years down the line, that will be the bigger game changer. And I think we've already started seeing those changes happening where you're looking to move towards it. If I move up the value chain and come towards R&D, there's a significant amount of things that have happened again on the R&D side, because clinical trials, you could not have volunteers necessarily coming in. You need to be in touch with your volunteers. Technology again came to the rescue there. So yes, while we've not made too many things on the technology side, and I don't think you can expect to have it happening overnight. It is a gradual process that is there, not just in terms of implementing the technology, but also of the adoption of technology. Because do realize that in the pharma industry, there's a large legacy that we carry, not just in terms of the technology or the platforms that you have, but also the way people have been used to doing things. So there is a significant amount of change as well that you need to put in as you're going through with implementing technologies. And I think that is the place where I would argue that CIOs are probably facing the bigger challenge, not just on technology evaluation and saying which technology do I need to have, but how do I really get people to adopt the technologies, and how do I get them to change and relook at the way in which things have been done so far? That's been the places where I think the biggest opportunities we've seen. Like I was mentioning, I think the front office is where we've seen the most of it happening, at least if I talk from my organization's viewpoint. But it is true right across the chain. You name it in terms of the function. I think earlier CIOs and the tech teams were seen as more back office players. That is no longer the scenario, I would think, right across the industry. We have been propelled right to the center stage, and across, I would think that people are now looking to say, we want to see a better way of doing things. We want to reduce manual operations. We want to see more technology coming in. Whatever those technologies may be, which are relevant to meet the need that is coming across. And the word that I keep hearing, which I think you will also probably picked up, is a lot on exagility, which is both efficiency and agility that's coming through. I think that is what we see a lot more that is there. You need to be able to marry both, and whatever technologies provide that is, I would argue, what is really coming to the fore now.
Right. I must also admit that I support your part that digital transformation leaders, the CIOs in the pharma sector, no more in the back end, but they're in the helm of affairs in the front, because during this pandemic, the operations had to be mostly operated through digital interventions, and that's why the role of CIOs have been most important. Mr. Roy, I have asked this question to Mr. Ganesh. I'll take perspective from others also, but I have taken a cue from what you have said, because I said that there were lacuna, there were problems, and the places where we actually lagged behind. But taking cue from what you have said, I said that do you think that this also brings a huge opportunity for us, for the pharma sector to grow in an exponential rate? Maybe, which has not happened in the last 3-4 years, actually has happened in 1.5 years, and maybe will happen too soon again. So your thoughts on that?
No, so it will definitely happen. And the point is the complex, see, two things we have to keep in mind. There are 8,000 odd pharma companies in India, unlike many other companies, other countries. The length and breadth of the country is huge. So the complexities of Indian supply chain is huge. And the number of product SKUs also, compared to other countries, we are way, way bigger. So the point is, this pandemic will be forcing us. The solutions are not very complex, and there are various forums in which the solutions for doing the last mile, the challenges we talked about, that would be addressed, and it would be done in a very accelerated fashion. So the solution is there. It has to be implemented, and there are many bodies who are working towards implementation of it. It will happen. This juxtaposed with the fact that there has to be serialization of products in India, which is there in other countries, that is going to ensure that this problem will get easily solved. Counterfeit will also be solved, and last mile visibility would also be solved the moment we do the track and trace solutions in India. The serialization in India, which has already happened in other countries, and Indian companies in other countries have been following the serialization, which actually facilitates the traceability to the last mile until the place you want it. So the solution building blocks are there. When Indian companies export to other markets, they follow that, and India would also move in that direction. There are different industry bodies who are as such working on this, and it would very quickly be done. So the supply chain part of the last mile, getting the last mile visibility, and how to solve it, that would get addressed. There are other things which are getting done, which is going to accelerate the digital transformation, is primarily in the manufacturing and the R&D processes, where there is significant scope for improving throughput and productivity, where the industry 4.0 and getting the convergence of technology, the whole digitization in the shop floor as well as in the R&D and the quality systems, those three things would have significant impact on the industry in terms of increasing the throughput and productivity. In cases of such situations like the pandemic which happened, it was not only the distribution which was tested, the last mile, but it was also in a short span of time. We are talking of supply chain resilience and supply chain flexibility, but you need to increase capacity in your plant throughout without adding new plants, without adding new manufacturing equipments. Can you produce more products? In overnight, we were making, say, 200 units of certain product in a week. In month of March, the demand was 7,000 for the same product in month of April. Now, using the same capacity, you can't do it. So how much can you expand? How much is your upside you can do in the manufacturing and the operational excellence initiatives in the manufacturing is going to play a very, very important role. Same thing is with drug discovery, how you do it faster, how you do it. So the overall in the drug discovery chain as well as in the manufacturing chain, how you can do it faster will make a important role. So and efforts have to be taken to increase this, accelerate the digital transformation by doing it right. Because many times if you have to increase the capacity in the plant, or can you extract more out of the plant, that would need significant integration, taking data from everything, each of the equipments, understanding it, and then doing analytics to improve the yield of the plant. And it is easier said than done. So how do you accelerate that process of doing it? So where you are making, you want to increase your productivity by, say, 30%, 50%. Those things are possible. But how do you do it more efficiently and how you do it in a more structured way is important. How do you improve your quality? How do you reduce your rejections? So those are the things which has to be looked into, apart from the supply chain part.
Right. You talked about the track and trace operations. You talked about the serialization, also digital integration in the manufacturing R&D sector. Quite important take by you, Mr. Atanu. Right. Let's have a perspective from Anjani Kumarji. Anjani ji, your take on this.
First of all, I keep going and keep coming to this. This is just due to network restriction I have put in my own company, so I am responsible for it. I am using 4G dongle. Okay, so everybody talked about last 1.5, 2 years have been very good for pharma industry, and I have just been in pharma industry for 2 years, so nothing to do with me. I just wanted to say that it has nothing to do with me. Coming back to, I think, a good perspective from Ganesh and Atanu, and probably Atanu's experience in the pharma industry, two biggest company, whole digital transformation with all the challenges what he has seen. I mean, definitely would like to hear more on like what was his experience on that when next time you go to him. While I will bring the perspective, when you come from the other industry, as Ganesh said, many of the things we took for granted. Because finance, if you go to financial industry, they had their own journey. And when I was in IBM, I have seen various industries. Also, if you go to logistics, automobile, there it is, whole journey is different. And not only that, even in each industry, automobile industry, if you look at what technology is in the car versus what technology is in the factory, way different. Let me tell you that. So similarly, when you come to pharma, when you go to innovative pharma, what we used to do I won't name the pharma company, but in 2008, I see some of the many generic pharma company not even doing to 2018 because of the business model being different. There in innovative pharma company, major focus is on R&D and the sales and marketing, whereas this side, you have major focuses in supply chain, manufacturing, quality. So we also have to understand this perspective. If you look at what digital transformation did for pharma, right from R&D, it gave you vaccine within a year, which used to take 8 years, 12 years, right? Then it comes the whole clinical trial we talked about. I mean, regulators are using AI, ML, different data technologies. When you come to manufacturing, I mean, probably 5 years back, very few companies had MES, and MES at that time just meant MES is manufacturing execution system. That just meant EBMR, electronic batch manufacturing record. But today, the whole EBMR has a altogether different meaning. How do you bring the real-time visibility of the machine capacity being utilized? How do you do golden batch? How do you make sure that you have the predictability? Then you have, when it goes to quality, right? There are, while most of us are already in the storing the data in the data lake and doing a lot of stuff on that. The latest one you could do is in your deviation OS, you could do the NLP, and what is humanly not possible, you could get insights out of that. Sales and marketing, I think Ganesh talked enough about it, what you could do. And there it's again, what we do in other industry, if we start looking at that possibility, that itself will take us to a different level. So I would say, yeah, pandemic has definitely pushed us. And one reason which is a very India-centric, is human capital is not expensive. So we always thought how many human we want, we will get it. Pandemic put us a restriction on us that you can't have more than this many people. Now people can lab technician, can reviewers work remotely, can line clearance be done remotely. And that is where a whole lot of changes on the digital transformation perspective is coming. And that is one change which I will say from the pandemic perspective. And second change, which I think both of you talked about, is people have started believing that digital can change the way, because nobody believed that in manufacturing organizations, 60%, 40% people could work remotely within a week. And most of the IT organization was able to do it. And that's where you see the whole change of perception. And that's the whole business is not just looking at pragmatic digital transformation cases, but they are also looking at unique and disruptive use cases from the IT and digital functions.
Right. Interesting take by Anjani Kumarji. Let's have a perspective from Mr. Atanu Bhaumik. Mr. Bhaumik, your take on this.
My take would be, as I think Ganesh was talking about, the acceleration has taken into 5 times, probably, what 5 years would have taken. It's happening now with this pandemic thing coming in. I would say it's for a pharmaceutical industry has been a late adopter of a technology. due to the regulatory reasons and the very own nature of the sector. This particular thing has changed totally. This pandemic, it is now talking about the technology, adoption of technology, paperless office, all those particular uh, 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 things which were never spoken about in 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 the sector. Like I used to have a fight with the CFO, getting sanctions for a difficult thing, but then now these things have become automatic. So this is one particular thing which will contribute to the kind of changes which will be done, which will be required to be done by the CIOs. What CIOs' lives have become easier now. As Anjani was saying, nobody has ever thought, 60% of the people will be staying at home and we are still working and working at full fledged. And as Atanu Roy was also rightly mentioning about this capacity mapping. Now, these are the informations which were loosely available in the organization. Now we are talking about having structured information, analyzing them, having a dashboard thing, making it visible. It's a different thing. The CIOs never had a dashboard for themselves. That's apathy. But that should be somewhere we will also need to have one, because this is how the things are going ahead. And if you look at the other part, as far as the R&D thing is going up, or the IT/OT convergence is coming up, as rightly pointed out by Anjani and also Mr. Atanu Roy about the quality assurances and quality things. We were only talking having MES as a system, but then today we are all having it's a basic primary requirement that we have a SCADA and PLC in place, and there are a lot many vendors who are coming out to partner with the sector. Now, I also come from a different sector. Now, it's just 3 years for me in the pharmacy sector, but then there is so many things yet I can see things to be done here as compared to the financial sector or the banking sector, or these are the sectors which are giving examples. And today, when the pharmacy sector have started adopting in the last 2 years or 3 years, the acceleration has become so fast, and people are looking outward, also taking examples from the other sectors and adopting it as fast as possible here. So these are really very bright spots in the sector, and the way things are going to happen. We are talking about IoT already into this particular sector. Probably pharmacy is the only sector which is talking about the sensors coming into the ecosystem, and AI and MLs are the ones which we are the only sector who are talking about at the most. And definitely the this industry 4 will be bringing in a lot of pioneering changes in this particular sector. Yeah.
Right. Some of the positives raised by Atanu Bhaumik. Let's have a perspective from Mr. Ravi Kalla on this matter. Mr. Ravi, your take on this.
Yeah, see, the one important aspect of entire supply chain is manufacturing facilities. As Atanu mentioned, flexible production is very, very important. We build manufacturing plants for a specific products. Now, if you want to manufacture a new drug or new product, either you have to build a facility or you have to modify them. So this is where the biggest challenge pharma companies are facing now. So most of the pharma companies now focusing on a modular based or continuous manufacturing systems, or in terms of flow reactors or continuous based systems they're focusing. This is where there is an opportunity for digitizing the entire plant. Now, the modern plants are definitely equipped with the intelligent platforms like either DCS or SCADA systems. Now, the biggest problem in pharma still, we have multiple vendors, OEMs, right? Like you have process vessels, you have clean utilities, and you have bulk utilities, and then you have building management systems, and then you have ERP, then LIMS and QMS. This biggest challenge is integrating all of this and getting a real insights of the complete manufacturing, the drug manufacturing, starting from the R&D to the patient. So this visibility is still missing, and there are plenty of opportunities that are available, and then we have to use those opportunities. Now, all these places, like starting from R&D to the hospital, we have bits and pieces of information. Plenty of information is available, but we are not able to utilize them because of the lack of the technology adoption or the competence, the technical competence availability in organizations. So most of the organizations, because of this pandemic situation, they realized that integration of all these, like R&D, manufacturing, quality, and then their supply chain is talking to each other. And we may see in the future the hospitals and pharmaceutical companies are going to talk to each other. Now the biggest challenge today, we don't have right data from hospitals. So you manufacture drug, but how effectively it is working again and on a particular patient is not available to the pharmaceutical companies because no feedback mechanisms. It's all bits and pieces. It may be in the real times, in few days, maybe after 3-4 years, especially pandemic has taught a lesson to us. We may adapt these kind of technologies, integration of pharmaceutical and healthcare systems together, and make it as more effective, and the drugs are available with better quality and at less cost.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi Kalla. I think we have come to the end of this panel discussion, but before that, I'll quickly give all of you 30 seconds each. If I may ask all of you, I'd like to start with Mr. Ganesh Ramachandran, that what will be the two deciding factors in terms of innovation for pharma sector you can foresee for India? Two deciding factors in terms of technological innovation.
So I missed your question. Sorry, would you mind repeating that, please? There's some background noise.
Yeah, I'm saying that what will be, if I may ask you, what will be the two deciding technological innovation which will be the game changer for pharma industry in India in near future? Quickly, 30 seconds to you.
So, Grace, to me, it is hyperconvergence and AI/ML. So, hyperconvergence being just the automation that you need to have, and all the different ones. I think Atanu mentioned the IoT, OT are ones coming through, and AI/ML we have discussed at length.
Anjani, Kumar, your thoughts. Quickly, 30 seconds to you.
Yeah, as per BCG, 50% of the work which is repetitive or data oriented can be automated in any company. So that is one thing which is using the combination of RPA and AI/ML. That is one thing which can be solved. And the second one, again, I go by AI/ML going into each area and which is not visible today, especially on the compliance side. These are the two things which I think will be the game changer for pharma in the Indian context.
Atanu Roy, your thoughts on that? If you can unmute your mic, please.
Yeah, I agree with Ganesh and Anjani. So apart from those two areas, I think this augmented reality and virtual reality would help in extending the skills of or augmenting the capability of people significantly, and also solving many things remotely. So that is also going to accelerate the productivity of the overall organization, especially for distributed companies where expertise is distributed. And the other part which is going to significantly help is with, say, less skilled people, can you do a higher skilled work using technology as an enabler, technology as an addendum? So it is going to complement and supplement the skills of people. So there is going to be this AI, ML based, robotics based solution, which is going to augment the people capability to perform better. That is going to significantly transform the India pharma industry, whereas robotics and other things are used in other places to reduce manpower or to other countries to improve speed and productivity. Here, the same AI, ML, and this robotics in combination or cognitive automation, using a jargon, will be used to improve the capability of people, and hence, an average or a junior people will be able to do a senior person's role.
Right, right. Mr. Ravi Kalla, your thoughts on that? Quickly, 30 seconds.
One is area we need to look at is IT OT integration and adopting AI and ML concepts, especially in the quality
Atanu, Bhaumik,
So that's
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, the way I look at it, there are two things which will take the precedence over all activity and will become the foundation. Is one is the AI/ML and the other is the blockchain. Because one AI/ML will be allowing you to analyze and think and all those things, and the blockchain will work as the memory. It will have your secure, enable transactions and data exchanges. That is what will be the way. Because without the data, there is nothing.
Right, right. So I take this opportunity to thank all of you, Ganesh, Ramachandran, Atanu Roy, Anjani Kumar, Atanu Bhaumik, and Ravi Kalla for joining us for this very exciting and informative session on accelerating digital transformation and the impact on the pharma industry. If I take a crux of a discussion of last 1 hour, I must say that uh, AI, ML, robotics, and also augmented reality will be the future. But also there has to be a convergence of physical and digital, what we call it digital nowadays, to take pharma sector to the next level in Indian perspective, especially keeping in mind the realities of new world order. But before I let you go, a small token of appreciation from APAC to all of you. Will be giving a certificate again using digital medium, digital certificate to all of you. Can we have the digital certificates on screen, please? The certificate to Mr. Atanu Roy, Group CIO, Biocon Group. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
A certificate of appreciation to Mr. Anjani Kumar, CIO Strides Pharma. Thank you so much, Mr. Anjani Kumar, for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
A certificate of appreciation to Mr. Ganesh Ramachandran, Global CIO, Alkem Laboratories Limited.
Thank you.
To Mr. Atanu Bhaumik, Chief Technology Officer, DK Pharmachem Private Limited.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And to Mr. Ravi Kalla, Head IT and Automation, Anthem Biosciences Private Limited. We thank all of you for joining us today for this important session on pharma industry. Just to remind all of you, to our speakers and to our guests as well, that this brings us to the end of the second day of India Digital Empowerment Meet and Awards. First day was governance. Today, entire day was dedicated to healthcare, and tomorrow, entire day will be dedicated to education sector. Yesterday and today, we have got more than 1,000 delegates attending this conference and more than 60 plus speakers. First day was governance, at least 30 plus speakers from governance fraternity were there. And today, at least 30 plus speakers from healthcare fraternity were part of this as speakers. And tomorrow, again, at least 25 plus school and higher education leaders will be part of this session tomorrow. Again, thank you so much, Ganesh Ramachandran, Anjani Kumar, Atanu Roy, Ravi Kalla, and Atanu Bhaumik for joining us this session. Do take care of yourself and let's take Indian pharma sector to the next level. Thank you so much. Do take care. Do join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the inaugural of third day of India Digital Empowerment Meet and Awards, which will focus on education sector. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.